We're getting into our next story here about Killer Mike and RFK. Now, this was interesting to me. We're going to start off with a recent poll, which may be shocking to some, in reference to Black voters. Now, Case Study QB, shout out to Case for doing the damn thing. He actually tweeted this, and I said, people need to see this poll. Choice for president among African-American voters. Check this out, folks. Joe Biden, 56%. Donald Trump, 15%. RFK Jr., 13%. Cornel West, 13%. First of all, Joe Biden went from having like 86% of the African-American vote or support to 56%. You have almost half of African-American voters that participated in this poll willing to support and vote for someone that is not a part of the Democratic Party. I hope this is very revealing to people. I hope this wakes people up because I've been calling it. I really have. But Joe Biden, some people are going to look at this and Democrats are going to look at this and they're going to paint this positively for Joe Biden. They're going to say Joe Biden has 56%. See, he has the majority. And I would be like, see, he used to have like 86. The fact that Donald Trump, this is another thing, the fact that Donald Trump now has 15% of African-American support, that's the most I think I've seen for a Republican since I've been old enough to vote. Okay, so how does Joe Biden allow that much percent, that 15%, how does he allow that to go over to the Republican Party? Maybe it's his policies and maybe it's the way that he's treated the American people. Then you have RFK Jr. with 13%. We're going to get into this one. And you have Cornel West with 13%. Now, what RFK Jr. and Cornel West actually share in common, they're both independents and they both lack much for ballot access. RFK Jr. has ballot access just in Utah. Cornel West has ballot access in Utah and Alaska and Oregon, if I remember correctly. So the ballot access is going to be the hurdle for both of them, right? But still, how is it? How is this happening? I'm going to show you how. RFK Jr. is now like in some way, shape or form has teamed up with Killer Mike. I don't know who reached out to who, but there is now a channel on YouTube called Blacks for RFK. Now, this is similar to what Killer Mike did during the 2020 Democrat primary when he was supporting Bernie Sanders. And he actually had this group called Black Men for Bernie. He had T-shirts and everything. Now it's Blacks for RFK. So RFK Jr. has been hitting the barbershops a couple of times. We saw him with Matt Hofra. This is a separate barbershop talking to Black voters. And people have been mentioning this, but I want to tell you something they're leaving out that is very important. The first thing that you need to know when you look at this video, RFK Jr.'s barbershop talk with Killer Mike and influencers. Okay, even if you look at the description, it says here, influential voices. This episode features a lineup of prominent influencers. Stevie Baggs Jr., Josh Powell, Felix Murray, Big Bank, TJ Tillman, B High. And of course, Killer Mike does the special appearance. So why am I telling you this, ladies and gentlemen? Because it is important for you to understand this is not RFK Jr. going into a barbershop talking to everyday African-American voters. These people are influencers. So just keep that in mind. Some of these influencers are popular on TikTok or Instagram, etc. But I want you to know who he's talking to. And I don't want you to assume that these are just everyday dudes just kicking it at the barbershop and RFK Jr. just decided to stop through the neighborhood. No, these are influencers. So let's get into the first part I want to discuss with this particular interview here. And this is Brian B. Hightower, and he's going to talk about some of the things he's worried about in reference to poverty. Listen to this.
Hightower, my main issue is quality of life in America. There are a lot of people working 40 hours a week and they're still homeless. What do we do to make sure that everybody is able to have a suitable lifestyle that is something that the American dream has afforded a lot of people, but a lot of people are not able to live that right now. I see a lot of people that are working 2 and 3 jobs, still living in the car. Who's taking care of the kids? That means that the kids become latchkey, they run the streets, and it's a lot easier for them to get into crime. What are your thoughts about just the quality of life in America and what you want to do to make it better?
So that's a really good question. There are, all of them ask like different things, but that's a really good question about the quality of life. And along with that becomes living wage, etc. I want you to hear RFK Jr.'s response to that. I'm actually turn this up a little bit.
I guess the way to summarize that is that we have destroyed the middle class in this country and the working poor. And right now in this country, 57% of Americans can't put their hands on $1,000 if they had an emergency. And if you are part of that cohort, more than half of our country, and the engine light comes on in your car, it is the apocalypse. Because you can watch your life circle the drain. You know you're not going to be able to pay the mechanic. You're going to lose your car. You're going to lose your job, and then you lose your home, and then you end up on the street. I was in San Francisco. I tried the Monsanto case in San Francisco in 2019, and we tried 3 cases in a row, and we won 289 million in the first one. These are people, American gardeners who got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer from Roundup. The first one was an African-American school janitor who had a sprayer. We won 289 million for him. We won 89 million in the second case, and then 2.2 billion in the third case. And I was in San Francisco for almost a year trying those cases. And every day I would go down to the gym in the morning in Union Square. Union Square is like, it's like Fifth Avenue. It has all the big shops like Nordstrom's and De La Valle and Prada and Gucci and Banana Republic and Gap. People come from all over the world to shop there. I went back a month ago and every one of those stores is closed. It's just acre after acre of plywood, and the streets are filled with people, homeless people, and nobody wants to shop there anymore. And I was doing research. What causes the homelessness? Why is it that California, which only has 12% of the population, has 50% of the homeless people? And the reason, there's a lot of studies on it that show it all has to do with housing prices. There's a famous writer called Matthew Desmond who's done all the research.
Let's pause, because let me just get straight to the point. So those things that he's discussing there are absolutely true. Yes, the housing prices have a direct link to homelessness, right? Not just in California, but all across the country. But what was very telling about this conversation, and I watched the entire interview, it seems like to me, if I'm bringing up the quality of life and I'm talking about poverty and you're in a Black barbershop, the obvious response is you need to repair what has been done to the Black community. RFK Jr. has a tendency, I think, sometimes to start telling like these long stories. And it's good for people to hear about what you have done, right? Like the Monsanto thing, like that's important, I think, for people to hear. However, like this is a very simple response. There needs to be repair. However, RFK Jr. does not believe in cash reparations. And that's another thing. I'll show you his website as well. When we look at the racial justice section for his website, that's another thing that you're going to have to understand. He doesn't believe in that. And it's easy to point out all the problems, but all of these things could have been answered just by that one word: cash reparations for African Americans. African descendants of slavery in this country. It's a debt that's owed, and that wouldn't just help out descendants of slavery in this country. That would also help out those of you who were not descendants of slavery. I think this is what a lot of people don't understand. What do you think is going to happen to that money? It'll be put back into the economy. That'll help the housing market. You're a small business owner, you own a business, it's going to help you too. Everybody benefits from that. But he doesn't agree with that. Now, let me give you a little bit of pushback here. Remember, you have survivors of the Holocaust, right? They received reparations from Germany, and I believe rightfully so. That makes sense. But at the same time, this country sends, $3.8 billion a year to Israel before October 7th? They've been sending billions to Ukraine. So I tweeted this out earlier today. For the people that push back and say it's divisive, you can't help one group and not help the other, I just told you it will benefit everybody in the long run. But those same people have no problem with us giving billions of dollars to Israel every year. They have health care for everybody. They have free college. We don't even have those things right here in this country. So you see, I want you to pay attention to how they decide where money is going to go and who they are going to help. This is what I want to get across to people. So I said earlier this morning on Twitter, I said, Black people, our reparations are going to Israel and Ukraine. Think about that. So that's the simple answer to this question. I'll let him go on for a little bit more here.
Research on homelessness, and he says this epidemic that we have in California is about to spread all the way across the country because housing prices are going up so fast. And 2 years ago, the average cost of a home in this country was $215,000. Today, it's $400,000. And the primary reason, or one of the primary reasons for that, is you have three giant hedge fund or investment funds: BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. And those companies own 89% of the S&P 500. The biggest companies in the world. BlackRock it manages $10 trillion. It's the third largest economy in the world, this one company. And they have now decided, they own all the business, the big business in this country. They've now decided they're going to own all of the land, the agricultural land and the residential. So they're buying up residential housing, and everybody has a story of a friend who, just was about to go into escrow on a house, was about to sign a contract, and somebody comes in at the last minute with a cash offer 20% greater than the asking price. And you're wondering, who just took my house from me? And then.
So that's true. That point right there is very true. It happens here in Massachusetts. It's been happening here for, I would say, a couple of years. And that is part of the reason why we have difficulties finding a way to purchase a single family home, because it is true. They'll come in with the all cash offer. So who do you think they're gonna sell to? The all cash offer or the couple that needs the loan? So yeah, he's right to call out BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street Corporation, them too. He's right to call all of them out. That is a big part of the problem. But I think one of the things that need to follow up with that is, okay, so what's the solution? As yourself running for president, what would you do to fix that? Something that I have noticed this time around, and I don't know what it is, but I have noticed with the candidates this time around, everyone is they're discussing the problems. But when I would ask the question, how would you fix this? What would you do as president? It seems like a lot of these interviews and discussions that are happening with presidential candidates, that piece isn't being accomplished. Like, we all know what the problems are. We know housing is an issue. We know poverty is an issue. But what people need to hear is, how are you going to fix it? And instead, what people are saying is go to their website. But no, you should be able to say this, though. You should be able to just come flat out and tell people, here's how I would fix that problem. So that is something that I've noticed. That's not just an RFK Jr. thing. That's been happening with a lot of the candidates I've noticed this time around. Now, there's another piece of this interview because there's different parts that I want to get into. This is the part where Killer Mike comes into the scene. And I will tell you, Killer Mike is already receiving pushback for the statement that he makes in this discussion about what to do with men that impregnate women. And we'll get to that. He's going to get all into it. And he's getting a lot of pushback. And I'm going to explain to you why. But in comes Killer Mike. So again, you see, this is Killer Mike, who was once a part of the Bernie thing. And I know we all have moved on from Bernie, but it's kind of weird. It's like, because RFK Jr. doesn't believe in a lot of these universal policies. He doesn't support universal health care. I thought Killer Mike supported that at one point. I don't know what's happening here, but I think maybe he may be attracted to RFK Jr.'s campaign because he's thinking about Black capitalism. So Killer Mike he's not anti-capitalist. He'll tell you that. I think Killer Mike tends to want to, promote Black business and promote Black banks, things like that. So that could be what attracted him to RFK Jr.'s campaign. But he says something here that, apparently has rubbed people the wrong way. Let's get into that.
I wasn't gonna jump on camera, but y'all done said some interesting shit.
Let's go, brother.
Really quickly, because what you asked for was a solution. It's something that I have been thinking about. I'm just jumping. This is not an official endorsement, although I do like a lot of what's been said here. So I'm gonna stay out the way. But just in matters of child support, to help you better understand, child support in the case of what you're saying is usually you were married to your children's mother.
Yeah.
Virtually. Well, most 70% of Black children are born out of wedlock. So child support is against you day one when you're a Black man, more likely, because more likely you're not married. Now, and this same thing I tell my daughter's boyfriends: don't get her pregnant. If she has a big, huge family that's going to take care of this baby, you're going to piss her off, and she's going to go file for benefits. Or she's going to need them in the case her mother needed them when she was a kid. Me and her mother were together. We were not married. But her mother signed up.
You actually have this conversation with your daughter's boyfriend?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I tell them, I say, no, understand now, she is from a great family. Now, I know this is not the case for every girl, but she's from a big, huge family, lots of aunts. She's going to be okay, but you're going to piss her off. You're going to leave her for another girl. You guys are going to fall out of love. She's going to play a lot of Chris Brown records, and she's going to say, fuck it, I'm going. But I say that because me and her mother were together from day one. Her mother did not work. I did work. Her mother, I put through school. I did not put myself through school. I did everything I could to make sure that in case I died, this woman would be okay with my children. She signed up for TANF, welfare, that type of stuff, which helps. It helps to bridge, especially when you're a young family. We know our welfare system has been constructed in a way that excludes men. It gave women an incentive not to have men in it. It actually says, we'll come through your house and we'll search your house and if
look for
there's children in there. So you're kind of set up from day one.
Hold on, you didn't know they looked under your bed and checked?
Yeah. Okay. Ask somebody who worked for Hood. That's why Ben Carson shouldn't have been running Hood. God bless him. I wanted to work on my brain but not control my house. So back to child support. I think the solution is this, and I'm out your way. 2 years. Young woman gets pregnant as a teenager, young man and woman get pregnant. This is the 2-year plan. First 2 years are debt-free. You don't have to pay the government anything back. So she doesn't get to drag him into court and the court doesn't say you owe us money for investing in your child through food programs, through early Head Start programs. Because in those 2 years, the boy has the option, or not even the option, he has the demand of the co-man to then go to a trade school. You have to go to a trade school, which incentivizes the United States to do it because we need more tradespeople. We don't have enough carpenters, we don't have enough electricians, we don't have enough people building roads. In my community, the girls are...
Pause. So the problem that some people have with that statement that Killer Mike made, that the men, like if he got a woman pregnant, the first 2 years would be debt free. So the first 2 years, he wouldn't pay child support. Instead, he would go to trade school. So some of the... Let me get the comments. I looked at one of the comments. So here's the problem. Here's the problem. First of all, like, nah, take care of your kid. Like, what do you mean the first 2 years debt free? No, take care of your child. You made that kid. that was weird to me. And then too, the other criticism that some people had was like, well, what about the women? What do the women get to do those first 2 years? Obviously, they would be taking care of the child. But I mean, while he is at trade school, somebody still has to pay the bills. Because I don't know, you guys let me know if you know of a trade school that pays you to go to the trade school. But the thing is that somebody still has to pay the bills to take care of the kid. So that would mean that the woman, the mother, would have to go to work and raise the kid. I don't see how this is that much difference, because it's just like you still got to pay for the bills. So that didn't make sense to me. But let me show you what he says. And RFK Jr. is eating this up too. Watch this.
Going to college and graduating. They have no men to marry because the boys are not going to college in the same way. My teachers were married to a tradesman. My teacher, who we call doctor, her husband owned a locksmith company. Her husband was a carpenter, was a mechanic. So they had a good life. Their kids went to school, right, the same schools we went to. I think that the incentive to solving the child support problem and a part of solving our infrastructure problem is to incentivize young boys who have gotten a girl pregnant. You must now go through 2 years of trade school.
But wait a minute.
But let's pause. So it's like, incentivize young boys who got a girl pregnant. You must go to 2 years of trade school. Why not back up for just a second and let's focus on the whole, idea of getting a young girl pregnant? Why not? And there's other things that go along with this. It's not just the fact of you got someone pregnant. It's also the fact of, which I wish they would have brought up in this discussion, but the fact that Black women have the highest mortality rate in reference to maternal care. So you have to remember that as well. Serena Williams went through this and she's rich. So for people who say it's just an insurance issue, no. Right. So there's other things that you have to deal with as well. And you got to pay them damn medical bills. Let's be real. It's expensive to have a child, to physically have a child in hospital. It's expensive. So I guess my whole thing is like, why not focus on maybe not trying to why not use some damn protection? I was trying to say this as nice as I could, you guys, and as clean as I could. But why not use some protection? Why not use some birth control? Why not? When I say protection, both of them, okay, the guy and the female, why not maybe focus on that first? And yes, accidents do happen, but it almost seemed like to me, it's just like, yeah, if you knock some woman up, first 2 years, you go to trade school. And so you don't have to pay child support those first 2 years. Maybe focus on not just intentionally knocking women up and you don't want to pay for the child. That's just kind of how I look at it. That's me. Listen to RFK's response.
Okay, I like what you're saying.
Let me give you the rest of the answer first.
Okay, go ahead.
After that boy graduates, you get a further incentive if you and the girl marry. If you and the girl marry, we'll give you these incentives: zero finance home loans, something out of HUD besides an apartment with a leaky faucet and rats and roaches in it, but incentivize marriage, which then strengthens our community, the Black community, and strengthens the greater community, because now you have more American marriages, you have people with stronger financial stability, and you have tradespeople married to women of education, and you begin to recreate communities like what Auburn Avenue was, what Edgewood was. I believe you could do this from the executive order, because the money that funnels down from the feds through the states to help mothers, then it can be attached, well, we're not only helping mothers, we're helping fathers too. If a boy gets a woman pregnant, not only does she receive TANF, I see your face, right? Good idea.
Pause for a second. So I get what he's saying. I guess he's trying to promote the family structure, right? So he says, then we can incentivize marriage. If you get married, then you get this, like help with like buying a house and all this. But guys, here's the thing. You have to actually want to be married. And it's like, if you guys get married, then you get this, this, and this. Okay. So are you getting married because you actually really love this person or in love with this person and you want to be married, or are you only getting married just to get those incentives? And then how long do you have to stay married before you can divorce that person after you receive those incentives? Because marriage is not a game. Marriage is not a joke. Like, you have to want to get married. You have to want to be married. And someone shouldn't have to offer you all these incentives for you to say, okay, I love you, let's get married. I don't know. Like, it would make me feel some kind of way. Like, I seriously would be looking around like, are you really in love with me? Or are you only proposing to me so we can get these incentives? I don't know, man. It's a mess.
If a woman receives TANF, she receives this, the boy now has a must. You're federally required now to go to trade school. And in those 2 years, what you put out on the other side is a person who's trained, a person who has an incentive to marry, and a person who becomes a taxpayer and not just a taker of taxes. I think that's the answer.
I just got to jump in because Mike just took us to church, and Mr. Kenny, that would also help with my issue in helping to reduce the number of abortions in the Black community, because now
I knew she was gonna sideline that.
I just think that this is being looked at from the wrong angle here. Like, you either want to get married or you don't want to get married. And not everyone wants to get married. Some people have actually been in relationships. They have a lifelong partner and they never got married. Actually, what's her name? Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell are like that. They never got married. Oprah and Stedman never got married. But I think that's because Oprah don't want Stedman to get her money. That's a whole nother thing. But so, I mean, marriage is not for everybody. It's not for everybody. So I'm just like, look, let me just sum up this entire conversation and just say, why don't you just repair? Why don't you just repair, pay reparations, instead of coming up with all these different loopholes to figure out how to help the Black community? That's kind of how I look at it. But not everybody wants to get married. Now, there's another part. RFK Jr. also had a conversation with Black women, so a panel of Black women. But again, I want to point out to you so you know who these people actually are. This segment here, RFK Jr., Angela Stanton King, and influential women discuss the current state of politics. So it even says here in the description, again, these are influencers: Alexia Adams, Angel McCartry, Shay McCrae, Tatania Davenport, Crystal Jordan, and Angie Stanton King. So again, I have to tell you this because I don't want you to assume that these are just everyday random Black women in the community that just decided to stop by and RFK said, let me have a conversation with you. No, these are influencers. This conversation should be had with people in the community that are not paid influencers. I'm sorry, but it's just go walk into the barbershop, not someone's barbershop that's an influencer. Just go to the hood and just go talk to everyday people, not the influencers. That's what rubbed me the wrong way. But this is the conversation here with Black women. Listen to this part.
Now about accrued financial knowledge. My father recognized that if he wanted to start a business, he didn't know anything about business. If he wanted to start a business, he could call one of his friends from the Harvard Business School and say, how do you do this? But in that community, they did not have accrued business knowledge. So people didn't know how to do inventories. They didn't know how to do accounting. And all of these issues were just mysteries to them. What my father did is he organized the business leaders in New York City to commit one day a month or one day a week to Bed-Stuy and go there and work with local business leaders to teach them how to do these things. And I'm very proud of what happened in Bed-Stuy when my father walked those streets. All of the stores on Fulton Street and Atlantic Avenue were boarded up, virtually 100% of them. The closest grocery store was 75 blocks. It was 3 bus rides. So imagine that. If you're a mother with a toddler and you have to go, if you want to go shopping, You got to take that toddler on 3 bus rides, and then you got to carry your groceries back in the sack with that baby for 3 different bus stops.
He's right. So he's correct here, what he's talking about. And if you haven't lived it, then you may not know about this. But like, my parents are from Baltimore, Maryland. My parents grew up in the projects, in poverty. I lived in Baltimore for a little bit, but I didn't really grow up in Baltimore. We traveled a lot, moved around a lot because my dad was in the military. But I will say this, and you'll see it in Boston too. Unfortunately, when you live in these neighborhoods that are a food desert, which there's many of those in urban areas, if you want to go to the grocery store, a lot of times there may not be a grocery store in your area. So yes, you will have to get onto if you don't have a car, you'll have to get onto the bus, the city bus, and then get off at a bus stop, get onto another bus and another bus to get to the grocery store. You'll see that a lot in Dorchester here in Dorchester neighborhood in Boston as well, which doesn't have as much public transportation access in reference to the subway. So a lot of times you have to take bus to bus to bus, get your groceries, and then come back. Like it's kind of like all day. Like, what else are you going to do that day? Right. So it's a mess, and it is a problem. What he was saying right before this was the fact that people need to know how to be able to actually start a business. And a lot of times, most of us just don't know. Regardless of what color you are, most of us don't know, but it's even more prominent in urban Black communities and rural low-income Black communities. His family had the privilege of having the right connections and that Harvard network to tap into, to reach out to someone and say, I want to start a business. How do I do that? The reality is most people don't have that network and don't have those connections. So he is correct about what he's saying here. What I did notice about this conversation, once again, and they're talking to a panel of Black women. I'm not hearing reparations. Again, I'm not, because here's the thing. How do you fix the problem of the woman having to take the 3 buses to get the groceries and things like that? If you do cash reparations, right, she can get out of that situation. Otherwise, we are just recycling poverty over and over and over. And poverty is a cycle, and it's very hard to break. He'll continue on here.
That's why, poverty empowers more poverty. And that's what was happening. We moved a grocery store, a Pathmark, into the neighborhood, and it changed the character of the neighborhood. We made capital available. My father pressured the banks to end the redlining. And you saw commerce explode in that community. So today, every one of those stores is occupied. There's an entrepreneurial energy in that community, and it's beautiful, and it's become the model now for 2,000 community development corporations around this country. And that's what I want to do. One of the things that I said to Crystal.
So he wants to do that for Black communities. And I'm not against that. I will just say, please be careful with what grocery store you choose to bring in, because from my experience, certain grocery names like Whole Foods, once they come in, here comes the gentrification. Because the landlords raise the rent because there's a Whole Foods now, and that tends to attract a certain demographic of people, and people who have the money to shop at Whole Foods. Let's just keep it real. The landlords then increase the rent in that neighborhood. The people who grew up there can't afford to live there anymore, and they're pushed further out. Now, instead of taking 3 buses, you got to take 4. It happens. So I would be careful with what type of grocery store you bring in there. The point that I think he's trying to make here is that people have to be taught how to do these things. And the old way of just go to college, just educate yourself and you'll learn, that is not enough anymore. If you don't have the right networks, if you don't have the right connections, if you don't have the right people that are willing to come in and show you how to start a business, how to become an entrepreneur, you'll be lost. Every now and then people get lucky here and there, but for the most part, you'll be lost. So in other words, you have to have somebody that is willing to do it. So I agree with him with that. I think that's a good idea. But again, as I said before, all of this could be fixed by repairing the issue. Now, let's go to this. There's one more clip, conversation of RFK Jr. with African Americans that is happening as well. And this is a discussion here. Timcast actually shared this here. RFK Jr. is asked about Palestine at his Black History Month Q&A. So he's rejecting again the apartheid label. So again, ask yourself, who are the people in this room? And this is why I keep saying these are not everyday folk on the street that he just walked up to have this discussion. These are certain like influential people that he's having this discussion with. And my advice to RFK Jr., if you're really trying to bridge that gap with the Black community, so to speak, you need to talk to everyday Black people, not just Black people that are influencers. That is it. And people can see right through that, by the way. Listen to this.
And right now we're seeing what I'm going to say is a genocide and apartheid. However, when I use that language, I'm deemed anti-Semitic. Where do you stand on Palestine, the freedom of Palestine, and the people of Palestine?
When you use the term apartheid, and you're not applying it to all the surrounding lands, which have severe apartheid. There were.
Sorry, let me go back just a little bit because I forgot RFK Jr.'s volume is a little bit lower than theirs. I don't know why.
Apartheid. However, when I use that language, I'm deemed anti-Semitic. Where do you stand on Palestine, the freedom of Palestine, and the people of Palestine?
When you use the term apartheid, and you're not applying it to all the surrounding lands, which have severe apartheid. There were people complain about the Palestinian refugee problem and say that was caused by Israel. Well, there were 750,000 Palestinians who left in 1948 during the war. Most of them were not evicted. They left because the Arab countries told them to leave. So,
pause. So again, I encourage all these men that are in this room to go do their own research and maybe talk to other people that are not Zionists, because the thing is this. RFK Jr. is leaving out a significant part about this conversation. He's saying the Palestinian people that left on their own. These people were slaughtered. There were people killed. There were people who were, you want to talk about sexual assault, that were sexually assaulted. These people were pushed out. And even if you don't even want to go all the way back to 1948, you can look at what's happening to Palestinians in the West Bank right now. See, RFK Jr., this is why he won't have this conversation with people who know about this subject. Because the thing is this. If he's saying that it was not apartheid, the people left on their own, then how do you explain the IDF and other Israeli settlers, because it's not just the IDF members anymore, pulling Palestinian people out of their homes in the West Bank today? How do you explain how certain Palestinian people have to walk on certain streets? They're not allowed to take certain roads in the West Bank. They have certain passports that say which areas they're allowed to be in, and that's not apartheid to you. So the thing is, again, I think RFK Jr. knows the truth. And I really think that somewhere along the way during his campaign, I think the Israeli lobby got a hold of him and already let him know what was up. And on top of that, he has been denied Secret Service protection. So I think that's really what this is all about. I think he's in the back pocket of the Israeli lobby, and that's why he's parroting these talking points. But what makes me even more frustrated is that he is saying to a room of Black people that it's not apartheid. It is apartheid. We also have economic apartheid in this country. So the fact that he can sit there in front of a group of Black people and just parrot this blatant lie, I would highly encourage all of you. You don't even have to, you want to listen to Katie Halper, Max Blumenthal, Norm Finkelstein about this issue. They're very educated about this issue. And unlike RFK Jr., Max Blumenthal has been to Gaza. RFK Jr. has not been to Gaza. So for him to sit here and tell this lie, it's a mess. I hope they don't believe this.
They wipe out the Jews in peace and then bring them all back, or because they were scared of the war. Very few of them were actually evicted. And but in the Arab nations, it was a total ethnic cleansing of Jews. 900,000 Jews were expelled.
Notice how he always pivots back. He takes the focus off of Israel and brings it to the Arab nations.
What happened to the poverty of the Palestinian people is not because of Israel. It's because of their own leaders, of the leaders of Hamas. Hamas declares in its covenant that its purpose is the annihilation of Israel and the genocide of every Jew, not just in Israel, but all around the world. And by the way, I'm pro-Palestinian. I'm against Hamas, and I think Hamas.
You're not pro-Palestinian. If you were pro-Palestinian, you wouldn't be telling these lies that it's not an apartheid state. You know, you're not pro-Palestinian. You're pro-Israel. When you walk down the street with the Israeli flag with your friend Rabbi Shmuley, you are pro-Israel. When you sit up there and you tell lies about the Palestinian people, you are pro-Israel. You want to bring up Hamas, but you don't want to explain why Hamas was created in the first place. If there was no occupation, if there was no oppression, you wouldn't have had a Hamas. And RFK Jr. leaves that piece out intentionally. For him to sit there and just blatantly lie. I really hope black people are not fooled by this. I really do. I sincerely hope they look into this yourself. Look into it yourself.
It's done more to hurt the Palestinian people than any force in the world. Right. The Palestinian people have gotten more money from international aid organizations than any nation in the world. We built after Europe. We rebuilt 17 countries that have been devastated by World War II. And we spent about, in 2023 dollars, $628 per person in those countries. We've spent now, the international community, $8,300 per Palestinian. Why is Palestine so poor? The reason they're poor is because Hamas steals that money.
The reason why they're poor, see, again, also the blame always goes back to Hamas with him. The reason why they're poor is because Israel made them poor. Israel occupied those people. Israel has rules. There are rules against the Palestinian people in Gaza where they can't even grow certain food. Olive trees. Like, it's freaking ridiculous. So he's still going with that pampered narrative. They received this much money. They received da-da-da-da. What about the billions that is sent to Israel? You wouldn't have to send them any type of aid. You wouldn't have to send them any of those things if Israel didn't occupy them. So it's just, when I see that percentage of the 13% with RFK Jr. for Black voters, that really makes me cringe, because it tells me people are not really paying attention to what this guy is saying, or they are paying attention, but they just don't care. So I'll show you what he's really saying. When we talk about racial healing on his website, check it out, folks. He talks about the civil rights movement, and he talks about his plan, targeted community repair. This will be available to devastated communities across the country, not just Black. The criteria will be around need, not skin color. See that? But this is on the racial healing page. So this is why I call this out when people say RFK Jr. has a reparations plan. This is not a reparations plan. However, because there are so many Black communities in need, this program will channel significant resources towards the rebuilding of the most devastated of communities. Okay. Listen to this. Prison reform. You can't reform prisons, not in this country. It goes on to say he'll seek the early release of nonviolent offenders. He will reorient the prison system around rehabilitation rather than punishment. But ladies and gentlemen, in order to do that, you have to remove the for-profit prison system. So you have to get rid of for-profit prisons. Police reform. Kennedy will reorient police to serve, not occupy Black communities. Oh, he knows what occupy means now. To keep neighborhoods safe rather than harassing their residents, the federal government will work with localities to change police culture with the pro-community incentives, training in de-escalation, and cooperation with neighborhood organizations. Isn't this some of the same things that Cop City said they would do? And they're basically trying to militarize the police. You have to cut down, you have to pull the tree from the root. You can't just cut off branches or cut the tree, which is what he's trying to do with police reform. You have to pull it up from the root. We need entire new systems when it comes to some type of policing in this country. It's corrupt to the core. Working class, working poor. Because Black people are disproportionately represented among the working class, RFK Jr.'s policies will uplift working people, will disproportionately help the Black community. Now, don't that sound like the same thing that Bernie Sanders said? So here comes the universal ideas, right? Problem is, even with these universal policies, Black people are still at the bottom. This is the same problem that Bernie Sanders had and didn't want to listen to. So it says here, these include a $15 minimum wage, tax credits, child care subsidies, and home buying programs. The $15 minimum wage is already outdated. It just, I don't know. I don't know what to say about this. I don't know what to say. They voted on the $15 minimum wage. What was that, like 2 years ago or over a year ago? And obviously the Democrats voted against it. But the thing is, that is outdated now. We're going with old Democrat talking points. Tax credits are okay. Child care subsidies. What about child care for everybody? What's with the subsidies and the credits? Home buying programs. We have home buying programs. So he would probably, hopefully he's talking about a different type of home buying programs. What type? What would you do differently? Federally backed 3% mortgages will extend home ownership to millions of Black families. Not if you can't come up with the down payment. That goes back to reparations. See, this is why schools, it goes on to say, RFK's policy team is looking at ways to revive these schools, Black schools in cities and inner suburbs, while also supporting parents to choose other options. What does that mean? What do you mean? What are you going to do? And then it goes to addiction. RFK Jr. will launch a nationwide network of low-cost or free addiction healing centers on organic farms available to anyone who sincerely wants to heal. I also include addiction to be a part of healthcare. So if we had universal healthcare, that, in my opinion, would include therapy and addiction treatment. So again, this goes back to healthcare. Why not just be for universal healthcare? Then it goes on to say with the youth, RFK Jr. will expand youth programs to make them available to every young person who wants to learn skills while serving society, the environment, sick, elderly, and so on. Okay, but again, this is for everybody. Everybody. And then free ID for all American citizens. It says RFK believes that these policies can be accomplished only by uniting Black and white working people in conscience and compassion. So this to me, and that's the last one, this to me is not reparations. It's definitely not cash reparations, but he also always said he's not for cash reparations. These are basically a couple of policies that he has that actually benefits everybody. And I'm not saying you can't have policies that benefit everybody, but this is focused on equality, not focusing on equity. This is the same issue that Bernie Sanders had. Bernie Sanders wanted to focus on equality. That's great, but you also have to adjust or address equity, which is not happening here and didn't happen with Bernie Sanders either. So yes, all of these things would help everybody. But the problem is, even after doing all of this, Black people will still be at the bottom if you do not actually implement reparations. That is how you get to the equity piece. And that's how you close the racial wealth gap. You don't close the racial wealth gap by canceling student loan debt. A lot of Black people don't even have student loan debt because they didn't go to college. So we got to talk about these things. Dr. Sandy Darity made it very clear in his book. You're not going to close the racial wealth gap with baby bonds. That was another one that people thought, right? So you can still have those universal policies, but when we're talking about equity, that's going to be accomplished by reparations. I'm just keeping it real. Now, some of you have told me that you are incredibly disappointed with third-party choices, or you got your hopes up and then you got let down. And some of you have said, what do we do now? Well, my comrade Rome from RBN actually answered that question. I want you to hear what Rome had to say. Just for some of you that may be a little bit down, feeling a little down and out.
Somebody had asked me, what do we do now? Who do we vote for now? Because they was feeling let down with the situation with Dr. Cornel West, and they still feel iffy about Dr. Jill Stein. And I'm here to tell you guys, nothing will change by voting for these people. Because the goal isn't to win. The goal is to get over the threshold so they can get federal funding, so we can, pay for advertisement, pay for ballot access, pay more people to get on the ground, whatever it may be. It's a marathon. And we are just getting started. So just because I have my disagreements with somebody like Dr. Cornel West, I wouldn't tell you not to vote for him. Because I understand that it's way bigger than him, it's way bigger than us. And, sometimes we just have to prepare. And sometimes we have to build mutual power. See, I'm not a voter. But I would never tell you not to vote third party, because we need mutual power. We need people with those political mindsets to go and take over these jobs. Now it's up to you to also hold these people accountable. And that's all we have been doing over here at RBN. We have been holding Dr. Jill Stein accountable. We have been holding Dr. Cornel West accountable. Everybody who say that they are for the proletarian, we have been holding them accountable. For Bernie Sanders, Rashida Tlaib, AOC. And we're going to do the same thing with third parties. We're going to make sure if they want to speak our language, they're going to get it right. But just take a deep breath. And remember, the fight is way bigger than you. We're not fighting to save our asses. We're fighting for the future generations. And you're going to want to have something in place for them, at least something. Now, you could go my route and not vote at all. Get your ass out here on the ground. Start organizing with people. If you're disabled, you can still organize. The computer is your best friend. You can connect with thousands of people a day. Like-minded people who want the best for others. Now, it's a lot harder than just voting and waiting for years. But your hands will be on it. You done put your blood, sweat, and tears in it. And you're gonna feel good when you see what you have accomplished. It's up to you.
So something that Rome pointed out here, and I think, some people really appreciated hearing this, because the thing is like, some of you guys have told me on calling, like, what do we do now? Where do we go? What do we, the thing is like, first of all, one of the things we continue to say at RBN is that nobody, I say this multiple times in the show, nobody is coming to save you. So never look at a political candidate as a hero. And two, there should always be some type of local organizing effort that you can be a part of as well. Some people don't vote, and that's their thing. Now, some people have said they don't want to vote for anybody because they're disappointed by all of the third party or independent candidates. And my whole thing is like, check me out. If you live in a ballot initiative state like I do, it would be a mistake not to go and vote for the ballot initiatives. You don't have to vote for the president of the United States, but you can still show up and vote for the ballot measures because that is going to impact you directly. That's your state. Also, you get to see how your state is spending money. So that's another thing that's interesting as well. So that's why we cover the ballot initiatives on this show as well. So you know what's happening, what is going to be on your ballot, what has passed, and how your tax dollars in your state going to be spent too. So that's one thing that you could do. But the other thing is we always say organize. We do mutual aid for our RBN. We all have different chapters in our respective areas. In fact, I'll be meeting with the Boston chapter tomorrow. So we all do different things, whether it's feeding people, giving people clothes. Rome has done so much for Tour for the Poor. He's been to Flint. He's been to Jackson, Mississippi to give people water when the government did not. And so those are other ways that you can get involved, or you can join an organization in your area that's already doing those things. There are mutual aid organizations all across the country. You can go to mutualaidhub.org and you can see which ones are near you. But there's always something that you can do. There's always something else that you can do. It doesn't have to be just, I hope we get a great candidate and they're going to fix everything, because they're not going to fix everything. I remember I thought Obama was going to fix everything. I remember I thought Bernie could fix everything. But at the end of the day, there's this section of the government that's called Congress. And they're the ones that write legislation. And they're the ones that are passing these bills. So you have to remember that at the end of the day, no one person is going to save you, but we can save each other if we work together in reference to organizing, doing community, mutual aid, and helping each other. And that's just something that we have learned over at RBN. And I wasn't always this way. I volunteered when I was in high school. I've been volunteering since I was a teenager, but I used to think that there was someone coming to save us. I thought Obama was going to be that hero. I think a lot of you may have, right? So what have we learned over the years, folks? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or Republican, et cetera. They answer to the military industrial complex and corporations. They answer to Wall Street, and they always put us last. So that's something to think about. So when Rome said, get your ass out in the street with me, help me, when I'm traveling across, I come into your neighborhood and I say, hey, I need some help with this kind of stuff. He said, hit him up. But I think, I saw people become disappointed over the past 2 weeks. And I told Roger Meadows the same thing. I was starting to notice that, once again, people were starting to feel like one person was coming to save them again. And this happens every election cycle. But remember, election season eventually ends. And when it does end, the people who are still organizing, the people who are doing mutual aid, that is continuous. So always remember that.